There you go. All right. Tré Burt and Jody Whelan, thanks for being here so much and chatting with us tonight. This is a unique opportunity to be in 3 different locations. I think we're all used to this now, but it's pretty exciting just to kind of connect in this way. Jody, you're in Nashville, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Tré, you're in Sacramento, and here I am in Fayetteville. And we're recording tonight for the University of Arkansas community, and we'll release this. And I think this conversation is going to be exciting. My role for the Center for Multicultural and Diversity Education is Director of Arts and Culture Programming, basically just trying to, look at student programming through the lens of, music and food and art and all these different aspects, but think about it in terms of like, what we can expose students to. And obviously my background as a musician, I really gravitate towards the music piece. And so Tré, you were a part of a great panel, First Amendment and freedom of expression conversation last month. And that was really exciting. And I felt like your voice really added a lot. Your musician voice and perspective added a lot. But
Oh,
this is a
great.
chance. Thank you.
I was worried I said something stupid.
No, not at all. In fact, Tré, I loved it. You were so unassuming where you were like, well, I don't really do the academic thing. And then you gave us like a 5-minute breakdown of like the history of Black music that was just incredible. Literally I was blown away. I mean, is that something you've done before? Like you're a student of history or just a connoisseur of music?
Yeah, I mean, I like to know where stuff comes from. And also my family is back from Piedmont, South Carolina. And my great uncle is Thomas Burt. He's a blues musician. So
how can
Black history is just so hard to contextualize because of the way post-slavery was and families broken up with lack of records and things like that. So that's something I was used to piecing together, my family lineage. And so, yeah, that's what I naturally do with music.
Well, I loved it because, I think you kept the audience wrapped in this, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. What, you took us from A to Z in a smooth, but really, expeditious way. And I got a smile out of it because you were kind of just really off the cuff talking about some songs and some artists. And you mentioned Nina Simone, and behind me in my office on campus, I have this big poster of Nina Simone. And I was just like, this is that kind of like serendipitous connective tissue thing that happens sometimes. And that was really exciting. So, but that was a chance to kind of introduce you to the university community, but then this is a chance to go in deeper. And then we got Jody Whelan here as well. And Jody, you're with Oh Boy Records, among other things. I'd love to introduce you to our community. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm based here in Nashville, Tennessee, around a small indie label called Oh Boy Record, and we're a singer-songwriter label. It was founded by John Prine and his manager in 1981, and it's a family kind of business. So I'm John's oldest son, and I got roped into it about 6 years ago. So we have a small roster. It was John. We have John in his catalog, and over the years, we put out stuff by Chris Christopherson, Todd Snyder. And now the new generation of artists is Tré and some other artists like Arlo McKinley, Dan Reeder, Kelsey Walden.
That's awesome. I love that it's living on. I think the Oh Boy story as a like fiercely independent label and really, really on John's, platform, I guess you would say. What I mean? If you thought John, you thought Oh Boy, or vice versa over the years. And I've got a story about that back in the John Prine came and played the Fayetteville Roots Festival in 2012, and it was this.
That's right. Yeah.
It was an amazing moment, and I was on edge, just trying to make sure we did everything right, and he was such a gracious, headliner for us that year, not only on stage but also just chatting backstage. And when we're walking out, I said, "Hey, John, thanks for playing Fayetteville again," and he said, "This is my first time." And like if I had known that on the front end, I probably would have like crushed under the weight of that or the idea of that. But a couple weeks later, I call into your all's office, and I get Al Bonetta. And I thought that was like how everyone in the office answered the phone, but it was Al, and he relayed that John had such a nice time. And that's when I first realized that, such a small, tight knit crew there. You know, Al was answering the phone, and he had talked to John about the experience he had here in Fayetteville. And so thank you for continuing that legacy. And that ties to Tré.
Thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Great.
And you know, Al didn't do email, so like he would only do phone. He would get people to print him out emails, and then he would read it and like write a response, and then someone would type. You know, he refused to accept email.
Sure. Well, I can appreciate that, especially and look at what we're doing here, right? I love the technology piece, but you know, I look forward to like an in-person chat with the three of us at some point, because this is only one component of our three-dimensional aspects, you know. So that's a good segue to talk about Tré, your music, and maybe we can, you know, start at the beginning and then, you know, get to the point where you connected with Oh Boy. But talk to us about, you know, where your influences start. I mean, you mentioned, did you say it was your great uncle or was it great grand?
Yeah, that's something I found out maybe 6 or 7 years ago from my grandmother's records that she has on the Timberlake side of that family.
Yeah.
I compared that with this book we have on the Burt side of the family called Promised Land.
Yeah.
And found Tom. But no, I wish that's something that would have been cool to know as a little kid, but I just found that out not too long ago. There's a documentary on called let me find it and put it in the chat.
Yeah.
It's racking my mind. It's not about him, it's about the musical community that was there in the 80s.
That's amazing. And you know, in some ways, is it almost, you know, more important to discover it later in life than when you were first starting your musical journey, just because maybe the gravity of it, you know, hits home? I don't know.
It was validating.
Yeah.
You know, because I knew the only other musician in my family was a jazz pianist, Samuel. And I never got to meet him. That's my grandfather's father, and he was a part of the Black Renaissance movement, following the jazz circuit from Chicago to Harlem. And he taught piano and went to Paris, and didn't really have that much contact with my family. So he just lives in the book. My grandpa, his only time meeting him was when he was like 13.
Wow.
So it's a little spooky finding out more about the history, but also like very validating too. Like you feel this connection on a different level, you know, familial, but also musically, which is a heavy thing to think about.
It is, man. I can identify, you know, some of those like stereotype archetypes of the, you know, traveling musician are kind of heavy, I can imagine, but you know, it sounds like you're digging into that, but it seems like just in what you're saying there is like family is massively important to you as well. You know, whether it's like, you know, found family, you know, through this research you're doing, but talk about growing up, you know, and when did you intersect with music in a meaningful way where you thought, hey, I'm going to play and start to be a musician?
When did I have that thought?
Yeah.
I had that thought, I think senior year of high school.
Yeah.
No, that was freshman year, my freshman and only year at San Francisco State. I was spending a lot of times busking downtown in the Powell BART station, Montgomery BART station, and I met a bunch of street musicians there. And that sort of education I was getting on the streets was so much more immediately rewarding, you know, more interesting to me than what I was learning in school, which I'm also interested in, but my head was just more about how to get better at playing music, how to do it more. So I booked a tour through Craigslist. I would post, you know, musician for hire, something like that. You know, some pizza shops, you know, there's like a little campsite for children, Applegate, Oregon, I think. You know, things like that. And I told my mom, I kind of sat her down and had this conversation with her that I wanted to go play music, which is hard because I would have been the only other person in our family that completed college. So it wasn't, something easy to do, but something I knew that I wanted to follow, Didn't know I wanted to make a career out of it. It's just the only thing that made me feel good, So I just followed that.
You gave up college to take that task on, it sounds like.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, with music, there's so many different stories that come with each interaction of meeting people, and that turns into a song, and it's just like become this self-perpetuating, like counterculture, I guess, in itself. So it's addicting, learn different skills and techniques from different musicians, and you just kind of follow your nose. I don't know. But
there's also something amazing about it that I'm missing after this long year of not gigging and not touring, where like you have these close friends that you might see once a year, along that path, along that tour route. But when you get back to that place, if you circle back around to that place, it's amazing. Like you feel like you've got a best friend in that town or whatever. There's something.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Also the community that you can grow as well. That's very interesting. The fact that you could wherever you stop is your work office. I love that. Instead of the idea of being in debt for 30 years, working a job that I was hardly interested in. That just didn't make sense to me.
I can totally identify. That's awesome. What I try to maybe not delve into this too much, but did you have like a heavy influence at that moment? Not necessarily in how your music sounded, but was there a guide, musician guide that you were looking to and going, that's a model that I feel like I, would want to.
Yeah, totally. I was completely, smitten with the whole like blues and folk era of things. Robert Johnson, really big into him. John, Townes Van Zandt, Bob Dylan. That whole world it's legends, the stuff of legend. And I guess I just wanted to I knew the only way to get to those types of songs is to build this repertoire of experiences, and that you can't get that in a academic setting, so to speak. You just have to go live. So I knew that was my model. I was kind of borrowing that. I just needed something to sing about.
I love it. Well, that's definitely like, I think where a lot of musicians start, which is like, you've got the spark, you've got some inspiration, and that you want and are willing to do, the tour and to just start putting yourself out there, whether that's like a busking tour that leads into a venue-based tour or whatever that may be. What tell me about your first, record or even just like studio work to, get from the busk stage or the venue stage to on the record.
Get from
just playing live to actually putting it down, on a record.
My first record I did in my garage, at my mom's house. That was when I was 15. I made sure to delete that from the face of the world, though. Now that I've listened to it recently, and it's like it's a different person.
How did you record it?
What's that?
Did you record it onto a laptop or cassette or?
Yeah, that was GarageBand. I don't know how I got that Mac though. I think it must have been my friends I was borrowing. The first studio experience I had was with a musician that was local to Sacramento named Wesley Jensen, and he had a studio in Reading, which is about 3 hours away. And I just had got my permit to drive. And I went up, I left at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd record for, 10 hours, but my mom made me be home. I wasn't allowed to sleep over. So I had to drive 3 hours back, which I was like, Mom, that's even more dangerous than me staying at this stranger's place. So that was my real experience of being in the studio, watching all these older cats, teach me how to build a record, things like that. And then it was like some DIY stuff in the garage. And then with one of my most recent EPs, Takes from the Dungeon, that was from a smartphone. I kind of just recorded songs into as memos so I wouldn't forget them.
Yeah.
And then I was frustrated because I didn't really have any money to go to a studio. I, couldn't be bothered to think about that track. So I just released that as a record on the internet as it was. And yeah.
So that leads to maybe to this segue to Oh Boy. I mean, I want to come back to some of these impetus moments that we were talking about here, but you put out one full-length studio record with Oh Boy. Let's talk about that process. I mean, I don't know which direction to start, how did that come about? How did the idea of releasing a record with a record label, specifically Oh Boy, even happen?
Joe, you want to tell this one?
Well, yeah, I mean, Tré had already done it. He did it by himself, so he put it out, he recorded it, wrote it, recorded it, put it out. And I think I heard it months later, I want to say. And, and I just listened to the whole thing and I was like, oh shit, what is this? I mean, is this on a record label? Who is this? Is this someone that's been doing stuff for a long time and I don't know about? Like, this is really great. Like, where did this come from? And then I just reached out just to say that, like, hey, this is great. Just a fan, thanks, maybe if you ever want to work together sometime. And I think that was it. It was just like, it just as a fan, really. I wasn't, it wasn't like I flew out to Sacramento to to be an A&R executive, and trying to find him in a club. I just heard it on Spotify, and I think I bought it on Bandcamp that day.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah. And then we reached out, but yeah, I mean, so just to go back, Caught It From the Rye, Tré had already recorded that record. So I don't know if you want to talk about making that record before we get into
okay.
Part of it.
Yeah. So real quick, that record came about from a friend that I had in San Francisco, from when I spent time there, who had recently moved to Los Angeles and was working at a studio it's called Primitive Ear Studio in North Hollywood. And I reached out to him because he was one of the only engineers I knew and a friend of mine, and told him that I had some songs to record. And he's like, oh, we'll do it on the cheap. I'm renting out the studio for someone who owns the building, but you can come through and of course, we'll make your record. So I'll take the bus down there. And these group of songs I had written in Australia. So when I got back to Sacramento from Australia, I released Takes from the Dungeon, and then, some leftover songs from that period I wanted to make a record with, which is Caught It From the Rye. So I'll take the bus from Sacramento to LA, like 3 or 4 times. Sometimes I had to sleep outside in the bush. I slept in a bush once because I forgot my phone and my wallet in Sacramento. So couldn't, set anything up, but all in the name of, recording the record. So then I had Caught It From the Rye and just kind of released that on Instagram, not really expecting anything of it at all. And then, some people gravitated towards it. I was able to book a tour off of it in Europe. And then I think around that point is when Jody reached out.
Yeah, I think that's every musician's dream. Like there's the connection you make with someone in the audience that really listens. But then if there's, someone at another level to say, like, I love this as a fan, but also maybe here's a plan to put this record out, or to put a little juice behind it, that kind of thing. That's maybe also scary as an independent artist. You know what I mean? Like, is that something that you hoped would happen, or was this just like a scenario where it was a genuine, ear that Jody had, and like, it just kind of fell into place? I mean, did you ever intend to release a record with a record label? I know it's a weird question, but like, I think about this all the time as an independent musician.
I don't know. I'm trying to like put myself back in that headspace.
Yeah.
All the way back then. I don't really think I had much like ambition to play that game with record labels. I had tried, a couple of times, albeit, not very much. But it didn't work out. So I was kind of jaded with that side of things. But then I put two and two together and realized Jody was working with Oh Boy and John, which is a huge influence on me. And it was like immediately, if I were to release music, that's a place, I just saw it so clearly at that moment. But no, I didn't really have ambitions before that too much. I was happy doing what I was doing pretty much.
Yeah.
But
sorry to take you out of that world.
This is even better.
Yeah.
Well, that's my outside view on Oh Boy as well. Very like fiercely independent, very like authentic in terms of what you all choose to get involved in, and so that speaks volumes. I mean, Jody, what as maybe on the fan level, what did you hear that was just really lighting you up?
Oh, I mean, just I'm a big lyrics, and melody guy. I think I can appreciate other aspects of writing songs, but just Tré's had something to say, and you could tell it was original, and there was a purpose for that music to exist in the world beyond just someone trying to become famous or making music because they, thought it was like, it just felt like there was a real reason why this music exists. And so if we got a chance to work with it, it would be, something that we could fight for and be proud of to work with, and be just, that we could help. I mean, there's things I listen to and like, and there's like, well, I don't know how I would help if we were involved in that. Right. But if someone has something like that's unique and important to say, and is kind of coming from a songwriter tradition, maybe we can help, and maybe if it makes sense, we can help there. And, I think we try and be sort of, modest in how much you can actually, one sort of part of it can make a difference, right? Because it's, it's the songs, it's being able to play, there's so much goes into like how many people discover it. But I think as long as we know we're kind of working with great songs to start with, then our hope is eventually people will gravitate towards that, hopefully sooner rather than later. But the kind of the premise is like just great songs will eventually, people will discover them, and it's sort of not hit dependent. It's kind of, it's almost like, not that we're anti-hit, but we don't want to like ever place like an artist in a moment in time or like attached to one thing. It's sort of, they create a body of work that will hopefully follow, the fans will follow across, with them and grow with them too.
I talk about that all the time, with my wife and musical partner, Bernice, where it's like, my hope is to get to the end of the road and look back and be delighted that we stayed in it that long. Not that there's some like plan or arc or anything other than just to, keep in it and keep writing, that to me is the goal, so that I can completely get down with what you're saying. I mean, how much of that flows, I mean, what you just said, oozes your dad, in my opinion, how much of that flows from him?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's his thing. He loved having an independent record label, but he always made the connection out on the road. And for him, like, that was kind of the music business, was sort of being able to play shows. Like, writing songs was kind of art and craft. And he got to share that with people either live, and then he also, by having his own label, kind of controlled how that put it. So like, he protected the songs, definitely. Yeah. But I think he never took the business too seriously. I'll say, like, he took it seriously, like his shows he took seriously. He wanted like his fans to have a good time, although he wouldn't like necessarily cater to them. Like, he knew sometimes he maybe would take it places where they wouldn't think they wanted, but eventually go. But I think he so he had a good sense of fun about it, but took the art seriously and sort of taking care of the fans seriously, but tried not to take too much else of it too seriously. Yeah. So we try and hold on to that. Some days it's easier than others, right?
Sure. But regarding that engagement, I read somewhere that like Tré, John popped into a show that you were playing in Nashville kind of maybe
Yeah,
unexpected
they
or whatever.
surprised me. No, that was a trip.
That's amazing. Not many musicians at his level, or even if you want to call record label executive or whatever, like that's wild to like engage at that level. I mean, was it a small club? What was the venue? Can you talk about that?
Just the basement east.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it was very small. And um, remember that day I was going around with Jody and Shauna, my man, Shauna.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. Shauna Cooper.
Eileen and the whole team. And, going around Nashville, getting me used to, like what were we doing that day, Jody? I think we're looking at.
Remember, that seems like 5 years ago, right? But it was like
a different life.
That was early 2020, right? January. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it something with video, like with Anthony, or?
No. Was it BMI?
Oh yeah. You're right. It was sort of the business stuff. Yeah, we were like just kind of showing, like, just kind of talking to, bringing Tré around and introducing him to folks and trying to make connections.
Right.
And we're talking about like festivals and stuff. Yeah.
And we're standing in a circle with all of us, and I get a text from my JP Harris musician around Nashville. And I told Shauna, like, great, my friend JP's coming tonight. I saw Eileen's face turn bright red at that moment. And I think I processed what might have took place, because she gave Shauna this quick glance and they looked at each other. I'm like, oh no, is John coming tonight?
Oh.
I just tried not to put it in the back of my head. Didn't say anything about it to Shauna, afterwards. Just tried to pretend like I didn't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was crazy having everyone in that room. It was a lot of emotion, on my end, that I feel like I still haven't fully explored, but just such a gift.
I mean, what's crazy is like that's one of the last. I mean, that was in January, right, of 2020. So it's not like, I think I maybe went to like 3 other shows after that, total.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Tré and I were talking about that before the session last month. We met and we're hanging out in New Orleans at Folk Alliance just right after that, end of January. I was assuming it was after that, because I think that was like,
no, you're right. Yeah, my timeline is pretty messed up.
I mean, but 14 years ago is what it feels like after this last year. But that was so like I hold on to that moment, kind of like the way you were describing it, Jody, of like how thinking about that last gig or whatever, because that was the last big hang for us as musicians. We settled in and had a few gigs in February and hosted a few shows here in Fayetteville for other artists. But I during the last year I had to like go back and like literally in my mind, like thinking about hanging out in the hotel and listening to music, and it was a scene of like everyone was hanging out, and man, I still am waiting for that to happen again. So I love that, and you took me right back, Tré. I love the like JP John Prine, but also JP Harris. He came to the last show we did at the basement, not East, but just the regular basement. We did a tour with our buddy Joe Purdy, where Bernice and I and the Honey Dewdrops, another couple duo friends of ours, we were his backing band, and we'd done a show with JP years ago in Knoxville, like the live radio deal. And like they used to do this thing on Fridays where it was 3 bands in a bigger room, like and it was Mary Gaucher and JP and us, and he never forgot that. And he like walked in and was like, "Oh, I saw you were coming through." And I'm like, "What?" That's insane, So whether it's John walking in the room or someone like JP, that commitment of another artist listening is huge, I feel like. So wow.
Well, JP Harris is one of the nicest people I know too.
Yeah.
So supportive of music and people.
That's my sense.
Coming up.
So that's what I love about these conversations too. I mean, maybe there's a sophomore at the University of Arkansas that says, "Who's John Prine?" and goes and listens, and I love that. But also JP Harris, or some of the other musicians you mentioned. I want to think that everyone knows the Robert Johnson story, but maybe not. And so that's a part of this conversation where we're wandering through and making connections potentially for the listener, so that's great.
Mary Gauthier is a great songwriter too. Some of
Mm-hmm.
the stuff she did with veterans like 2 years ago is just incredible.
Absolutely incredible. She's been someone that I've looked up to and admired, and that show that I mentioned in Knoxville was it was probably like 2011 or 2012. She just released this record called The Foundling. And like, not to get too deep into this stuff, but like, it's definitely the heaviest of all. I mean, Mary's just heavy in general, like, if you want to dig in and get heady about it, like, go listen to Mary. And that's the kind of music I love. But The Foundling was just like the antithesis, or the pinnacle of that. And I just remember, standing side stage, just almost just bawling, it's just so heavy. But at the same time, like, I gravitate towards that. I mean, I want to feel something. So, to tie that back, Tré, to your music, I feel something big time when I listen, and some of it is musical, where I'm caught in a very good place musically, and I'm hearing something that feels very unique. Jody, I think you kind of put it in that terms. It felt, it felt authentic, or whatever that means. But lyrically, it's also pretty heady for me, and I gravitate towards the lyrics. I hate to be this guy who asked this question, but like, where do the lyrics come in the process? Because I think there's probably some students engaging this that are not just thinking about the business or recording a record, but also like the process of writing, that are where you were as a freshman in college, thinking about jumping out there and busking. Talk about that piece.
I guess sometimes like a line will come into my head, or maybe like a pair of words that sound good together.
Yeah.
And I'll just put it on a piece of paper and play around those words, put them in different lines. But it's a little bit more weird than that. Mostly it's kind of like nonsense melodies in my head that I kind of like sound. I could do it right now, but maybe it just sounds a little too dumb. It's just like nonsense gibberish that I kind of translate into lyrics depending on how the gibberish sounds. Like a certain noise would sound like a word, and so I'll write that word down, and that's kind of how the lyrics go. But that comes. I write the guitar with the lyrics at the same time. Sometimes I'll write like a poem or a haiku or something like that and put it on something I'm making on the guitar. But I'm still figuring out how that works. It's tripping me out. Sometimes it's like a poem you're writing, or sometimes you're just translating gibberish.
John used to say Chuck Berry was one of his favorite lyricists, and he doesn't often get credits as lyricist, but what John loved about him was that you could just read the words on the paper and hear the melody.
Yeah.
You could hear, like, because he had the music in his head, and so like for him, like, so when he was writing a song, it could be the music, it could be the words, but it's sort of like there wasn't necessarily that divide.
Yeah.
It was kind of both. And so like maybe it was like sound, but maybe it was a word or an idea. And so that, I think, I don't know about Tré's process, but I know for some writers, like it's almost like fused a little bit. Like there's ideas that you want to get across to people, obviously, but how you do it, it's almost like I don't know. I can't speak on it really intelligently. I don't do it, but it's almost a different thing. It's like, it's both, right? The word and the music in some cases, I think.
I identify with that. That's definitely it for me. When you talk about gibberish, I just sing vowel sounds until I hear a word, That's it. It's often like a vibe of the guitar, and then that kind of mumbling or vowing, that's happening. And then there's a word that just falls out of the sky.
Yeah, my songs sound very, very stupid when I'm at their like beginning form. They do not sound. Nobody would want to listen to them, but it's necessary. You have to like fish out, what the sound is going to be at a very like removed perspective, but yet I don't know. It's a trip. I don't know how to explain that.
I love the Chuck Berry reference, and that's a nugget of insight that I'm into, because growing up, my grandfather was probably my biggest influence musically. He wasn't a musician, but he was just a connoisseur. And I grew up in Tulsa, and I can still, even at a very young age, I knew my grandfather's two favorite artists, and they were Bob Wills and Chuck Berry. And there's, as I think about it later, and as I have become a musician, I look back and I'm like, I see a connective tissue there that's that he heard, but I put Chuck Berry on that level that John was describing. Like as you were saying that, I just started running through the lyrics in my mind, like Maybelline, why can't you be true? Like that I would have to foot that out to see what the poetry of that is, but like, wow, that is musical, it's working. So,
well, like everything, I mean, outside of like, cave paintings, pretty much all like stories, poems, everything was out loud, right? It's not until we kind of got to, the printing press that like, poetry or stories were like kind of, experienced like is like flat, right, and two-dimensional, because like it's always been songs and stories and poems were like made to be out loud.
And I mean, if you really get into that, and I'm not an expert in it in any way, but this notion that like attaching word to melody somehow makes the human brain remember it. So in that sense, where if you're trying to hold on to knowledge, if we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years ago, if you're trying to hold on to knowledge and there is no way to record it, then it has to be attached to something that's a medium. It has to go on a wall, or it has to go hang on a melody. That's pretty powerful. What's amazing to me about this process is that it has been happening for so long. I mean, to your point, Jody, there's this modern version of like recording it and making it, but the actual tradition that we're talking about here is ancient. I mean, we're talking about like finding words and putting them together in a way that then translates emotion to someone else. Like that's pretty powerful. I mean, Tré, is that something that you're cognizant of? I mean, we talked last time about you're kind of, well, we can just talk about the song specifically. We talked about Under the Devil's Knee. You know what I mean? Like very precise and very targeted at what you were trying to get at. And I think the power there is that you took biography and made it something that was the biography of Breonna Taylor or of George Floyd was completely missed in the story. We didn't have access to it. I feel, what I mean? It was such a explosive moment in time that we missed the humanity, and your song got at that. I mean, can we talk about that for a minute? I mean, it strikes me emotionally, but it also strikes me from a narrative standpoint. That was not a question, I'll acknowledge. That was a ramble.
No, well, that song was different. It wasn't the whole gibberish thing I was talking about earlier. That started on the guitar, and I was in drop D tuning, and I just played a D chord. You know how sometimes you'll play a chord and just sounds like a normal G. You don't hear any song in it, and sometimes you play the same chord and you hear a song.
Yeah,
it was like played the D, and I heard what the song should be about. And I was very, didn't want to write it. Just sounded like a lot emotionally, and it sounded difficult, but I knew exactly what it had to be about, which was heavy on my mind up until that point.
Yeah.
So that was something that has always bothered me. When you see this happen in the country, they just turn it into a one-line headline, and that's about it. Boy shot dead, black man shot dead, things like that. Boy holding gun. So I knew I wanted to attack that narrative and tell their story. So I spent, a couple hours researching, reading up a lot of information about their lives. Yeah. A lot of it I knew already. A lot of it you don't have to know. And yeah, I wanted to tell that story very directly. So that's a bit different than the other types of songs.
Yeah, I was not asking the question right, but that's what I was getting at, and thank you for picking up on that, Trey. This notion that like there's a conveying emotion through song, you know, and then there's conveying what you were able to do there, you know. I can identify.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you know, like that is incredible, and you also hit on what I was trying to get at there, which is like that there's a deliberate craft in Under the Devil's Knee that is maybe different than that just hearing, you know, just vowing out and singing out and hearing what happens.
Yeah, that's very real world
yeah
things. I don't let myself drift away when I'm writing a song like that, you know.
Yeah. Can we talk about that from the other perspective, you know, Jody? I mean, you know, I assume the Oh Boy was involved in, you know, releasing the video with Trey and doing that piece of it. I mean, you know, that was during a moment in time where I'm sure you were trying to figure out what was happening both with the label and musically and everything else. But here's this song that just, you know, has to come out.
You know, it's hard, right? Because it's like, it's not difficult in that, like, this is obviously a song that we want to put out, but, you know, knowing how personal it is, right? There's part of me is like, how's Trey doing? You know, like, and how are we doing, right? And how's every, you know, and like, and what's healthy and what's business, right? You put this out, and I think, you know, we try to be as independent as we can, but like, it's all on Amazon and Spotify and Apple, and like, even if you were just buying it on Bandcamp, you're still accessing your internet through Comcast or whatever, right? So it's like, and not to get too tied up into that part of it, that's, you know, that's not what the song's about, but, you know, I just was like really wanted to make sure that it was exactly what Trey wanted to say, and that we were going to be able to take care of it, you know, okay. And so like, and yeah, I mean, I think, and some of that's probably like wrong on my part, right? Like, I don't, you know, Trey's like you know, knows what he wants to say. He's like he's a really thoughtful artist. Yeah. But I think just sort of just because of how like wild and shitty and crazy everything was, as sort of like, you know, should we do it now? Should we wait? You know, I think I had some questions about that, but I think just the more like, you know, listen to it again, it's like, no, like lots of people need to hear this. Yeah. And the song's important, and we just need to figure out, you know, how to get it out there and for folks to hear it. Yeah. And I mean, I'm really proud of how it turned out, and, you know, how Trey, you know, I think he put a lot of work into it, writing it, but also recording it, because with the pandemic, you know, it wasn't easy coordinating all those different parts. And I thought the end result came out great. And the video too, you know, just phenomenal. And that's, you know, I think when we're doing our best work at the label, it's getting as close to exactly what an artist wants to say out into the world, right? So I think, you know, on that one, I feel like we, you know, hit what we were trying to do, you know, because, you know, I think, you know, we can make statements about how we feel about systemic racism or police brutality, but really, like, for like a record label, for where the rubber meets the road, it's like, what kind of art are you going to support that like actually addresses it, right? Because yeah, I mean, we can support organizations and charities, and we do, but I feel like the most direct way we can address it is to release music, you know, that is about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, I don't have like, I knew this interview was coming up, but I still don't have like, it's not fully formed, right? Because it's such I mean, it's such a big topic.
I think you put that spot on, Jody. I mean, that's why that's why I wanted to revisit it here, just to discuss it, because we didn't get to go in depth, you know, in the freedom of expression panel, Trey. But it's it was exactly what I needed, and I can only speak to my, my reaction to it as a listener. It's exactly what I needed, because it anchored me in, like I said, the humanity of the, of Brianna or George. And it was like, I was searching for something to hold on to beyond the chaos of the media cycle, or beyond the chaos of uncertainty, or beyond the chaos of 2020 in general,
Yeah.
And so that to me, like, I can't divorce it from 2020 in that moment in time. And that's rare, like that's what stays 20 years down the line. You know what I mean? I mean, to me, I don't know. So just, I want to say that just as a listener to you, but it's that kind of thing for me. I think for a lot of other people as well. Does it just exist there in between records, or is it going to, be on a next record, or is it this one song that stands on its own? Maybe we couldn't answer that, but is it just on its own?
We talked about putting it out like a physical like format, maybe with another, like with the spoken. I don't know. I know we've talked about it, and then I think a while back you were maybe going to put it on the record, but I think maybe not now. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird, right? Because you didn't get to like play it live, really, or I mean, you played it, but not, like a regular show. Yeah.
Well,
the whole thing was just a lot with the pandemic and that. It's hard to imagine a couple of years from now it'll be a little easier to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, what just happened in the last week? I don't know. It's sort of like John wrote Sam Stone and Flag to Cal about Vietnam, and he thought that he'd be done singing it in about 6 months.
Yeah,
like, we'll figure that out. America won't keep invading countries and and like killing people. Like, I mean, obviously naively, or like, we'll figure it out. We'll take care of veterans and, their issues around homelessness and addiction, like these songs will go, I'll write different songs.
Yeah.
And
he played them right up to the end. And then,
I mean, 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heartbreaking to think of that Under the Devil's Knee would be a song that is relevant, in 2 years from now, even. Yeah. But I don't know.
We got into this briefly of just connecting it to like, the narrative tradition of a song like Hurricane, Bob Dylan, and I mentioned it on the First Amendment panel. I think I should mention it here. I was driving in the car and Hurricane came on. My daughter, she just turned 15. She was with me, and she's a listener. She's been around music because of what we do, and she's been in it, and her reaction, not to speak for her, but like the conversation we had was like, she felt it was very topical. It was like, she's like, when did he write that? It was like a question that really she asked, because she wasn't, she didn't grow up, like, she hasn't seen the movie. You know what I mean? It's like, she doesn't attribute that song to like the Denzel movie or anything other than she was just listening to, to the song. And, so it stands up, or, Sam Stone or Flag Decal, good example of it stands up, I don't know how to say this, but it's like, I hope Under the Devil's Knee doesn't stand up, but it's gonna stand up as art no matter what, whether it's commenting on, status of our humanity. I don't know. 20 years down the road.
Yeah, it's hard to divorce yourself from a song like that. I had complicated feelings about playing it live, or it being part of like a set list in the midst of all these other types of songs. But it's a relationship, that you have with the song, and I'm still learning about it. But for now, I think it's important to play.
Yeah,
so
I agree. I totally agree. Thank you, Tré, for
thanks for listening.
The world. So that then takes us to that segue that I was kind of bumbling through there, which is you are working on a new record, and then this is kind of like something that, you know, is still not out of the COVID era, but, you know, I've heard from Sean and you're kind of working on this and maybe thinking about a release in the coming year. Can you speak to that a little bit? What's happening with that?
I don't know. Can I?
Maybe not the release, but I mean, you're in the studio and you're feeling you're feeling that out right now.
Well, okay.
Maybe
so
this is maybe the edit point where I go,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just got back from recording the record, so it's all on there. And now we're just doing some bells and whistles and things like that.
Yeah. How does that feel to, you know, come out of this last year and then, you know, get back to productivity in a studio or working on a record?
Well, I was busy taking in that experience in itself, being in like a studio of that. I mean, the people that I was working with, you know, are people I've been listening to since I was a kid. So every day I didn't take that for granted. I was just stunned, you know.
Yeah. Being
in high school, listening to these people and then looking to my left and just being like, how the freak did you get here?
How did I get here?
Yeah. So I really don't know what happened. There's a joke that we had in the studio saying I was emotionally blacked out the whole time recording the record. And it's kind of true, you know. I was hit with this this wave of great gratitude for what was happening, and also confusion of what are we, you know, where is this going? Am I going to be able to play this record this year? You know, it's a lot. Everything's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's good. It feels good. I feel great.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And yeah, I was preemptively asking that question maybe, and I understand the conundrum of talking about it now, but I'm looking forward to it and excited that, you know, that we're all getting back to some productivity. You know, that's the challenge.
Yeah. How do you feel about things opening back up and playing in front of people? Are you do you have any reservations about that? Or?
Great question, Trey. And I appreciate you asking. I mean, we did one show last November out on the street here in Fayetteville, kind of modeling, you know, this street concert series that, you know, this very spaced, you know, and physically distanced thing that we're doing, that you're going to join us in June and do, you know, play for us. And
yeah,
I was overwhelmed, to be honest. You know, there's this thing that happens that I don't know. I've talked to other musicians about, and maybe you identify, like, I call it a present stage. It's like the musical example of being present, and it doesn't always happen, right? Like sometimes you're in your head in a place and you just get through the gig and you're not present on that stage. And you know, it was as present a stage as I've felt in a long time, not just because we took a year off, but because I to your point, I like felt very centered in, like, I am so grateful that I'm getting to do this at this moment. And it was cold as shit. I mean, it was like November 13th, and it was like, you know, all the elements were there that would make it one of the not memorable moments, but it just, I felt very present, and it made me think about maybe that's the way gigging can be going forward. You know, like maybe I got a little complacent pre-COVID of like what the job is and what what it means to get to do this, you know. Exactly. And so I don't know, that was a long way of answering your question, but I was exhilarated.
Yeah.
But not in a way where I was thinking about, oh, who's listening or where's this going and what the next gig is. I was just exhilarated to be standing on stage, and every song that we were singing, I was in it. And you know, I think that's what I crave, whether it's like a human connection like this where we're having a conversation and it feels like we're in it, or whether it's a present stage or whatever that may be. So, yeah,
I love that.
Well, thanks for asking.
Of course.
You know, Jody, I think we should circle this back around to you. I mean, how are you feeling about music coming back, or where?
Oh yeah, you know, it's weird on the label side. We've been like really busy, right? Which is, it's crazy because, you know, I talked to a lot of people in Nashville and how the pandemic sort of hit people unevenly, right? So like promoters, venues, agents, tour managers, crews, artists, we all had to just sit at home. And, you know, and we were sitting at home too, but, you know, because of like what what record companies and like say publishers do is can be more static, you know. It was strange and it's surreal, but I see like how it affected, you know, whether folks on our label, but also just other musicians and people I know and that work in the industry, like having to sit and not do anything and not know when they can get back to playing shows was tough, you know. You know, it's certainly Nashville's such a music town, so the shutdown really hurt here, you know, a lot. And I think everyone's hoping we'll be able to come out of it, but I think there's probably a few places that maybe won't reopen. And there's definitely people that were going to go on their first tour ever that didn't, you know, and hopefully they'll still stick with it and stay in music, you know, instead of finding something else to do. But me personally, you know, we helped put on an outside show in November, actually in Nashville, and the weather was great. It was actually really warm.
Yeah.
You know, I wish we had done more of them. And that it felt safe, but I just on a really personal note, it was really weird to be around that many people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we're still just in our personal lives, we're still pretty cautious, you know, even though my wife had been vaccinated a while ago. She works in healthcare. So I think I'll just have to get over that hurdle. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to go back into a restaurant or a bar.
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe try and see some outside shows first and, you know, ease back into it. But, you know, I miss it. Like, I miss just being able to walk into, like, you know, a shitty bar or go to a club or like going to the Ryman or going to a big festival.
Yeah.
You know, so I will be excited and I miss it, but yeah, it's weird. I kind of have this, I think, psychic hurdle of being around people again. And, you know, I mean, I do a lot of these and I do a lot of, you know, conference calls and FaceTiming with people. And so, you know, I don't think my social skills have totally atrophied, but it is sort of like being around people is weird, you know, because, you know, when you're actually in a room with someone and everyone takes up physical space and, you know, and the things you can see and how they're like, you know, shifting their legs around or they're tapping, you know, their hand, you know, just all of it. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm excited, but I think I need to kind of, I don't know, maybe I just need to like go to a Toby Keith concert and like completely get over it. You know, like, you know, I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do anything now. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that to tie it back to that time, Tré, in New Orleans. You know, I mean, this was like a 2-room hotel suite kind of thing. I mean, that makes it sound
it
wasn't fancy, but like, you know, there were people sleeping on couches and you know, in armchairs, and like, you know, it was a wild scene. And I go back there in my mind and I think, like, can I do that again? And of course, yes, because like that's where I'm at home. But man, you know, I'm trying to get back to that, and I don't know what the time frame on that is. But to your point, outdoor, you know, we're committed as an organization, Fayetteville Roots, committed to outdoor. Like even some stuff we're doing with the university, with the Center for Multicultural and Diversity Education. You know, we're looking at outdoor just to try to make it a, you know, we need a gathering place. We have to have a something to gather around, and music is always one of those things we can gather around. But you know, it's going to probably transition for a while as an outdoor thing, and that's okay. I mean, some of the most powerful musical experiences I had as a kid were definitely outdoors. You know, like I grew up in Tulsa, and the Juneteenth music celebration in Tulsa is legendary. You know, like there were 30,000 people would gather, you know, over in June over the Juneteenth weekend and have these outdoor experiences. And it was powerful for me. And I'll be honest, I haven't gotten back to that kind of thing. Like, you know, I've been to some big outdoor festivals, but they're always removed from a community. They're not in the community or whatever. And so, you know, I almost see like this as as this like Renaissance moment for gathering outdoors and gathering in alleyways and or on the street, and you know, and like refinding some of those places, you know, where we can, you know, make music, you know, the center of that. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to get too heady about it, but like I see it as just an amazing opportunity, cautious opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if I was a college student, like,
yeah,
I don't know, would I be like going to like illegal raves like 7 nights a week? I mean, I'd like to think I wouldn't, but then also like I might, and I don't know, right? Like, I mean, it's not responsible, but I remember what it felt like to be like a teenager or a young adult, and like, I mean, yeah, I don't know, like, I hope everyone gets vaccinated, but I also, I mean, all the sort of like crazy shows I went to as a teenager and a young adult it's definitely formed my identity as a music fan, right? Like house shows, basement shows, everything, all of it,
Just because I love the particular, is there one that sticks out? Was there like a wild house show that just like,
yeah, I mean, there was like houses that were like sort of like got names. There was like the White House, there was the Ackland House, there was like all these like basements that were like dungeons. There was I mean, actually, I was texting with a friend today. It wasn't a house show, but one of the very most exciting shows I ever saw. I just still feel the way it made me feel was that there's this bar in Nashville called the Springwater, which has like been around, I think, since the 1800s. So it's like one of the oldest bars. It's like just like basically dirt floor, like absolutely gross bathrooms, like one of those kind of places, right?
I know that place.
Yeah, right. And I saw Justin Townes Earl there. He'd just gone solo. He'd just gotten sober, and he had all these songs, and the room was just packed, and it was really sweaty, and like probably 3/4 of the people in that room probably knew him, right? Just because he came up from Nashville. And just I still like, and I definitely I wasn't sober that night, but I still remember the way that like it made me feel, right, hearing those songs, the intensity that he delivered with, and into that small room, and all the people in there that knew him and knew how good he was, but didn't know just exactly that he had this fire in him and the things that he wanted to say and came out of him. And that was probably almost 20, no, it was maybe like more like 17 years ago, but I still remember the way like where I was standing in that room, how I like physically felt hearing that stuff. And I mean, I can, that's what a show can do. And especially for I hope I can, that I can go see a show and I still feel that way. But there is something really special, I think, when you're younger, and things hit you, and kind of just blow open your, like sort of, it's like you discover like a new emotional map of the world, right? You thought like, oh, this is the way the world looks. And then like you just hear songs or ideas, and then like, oh wait, the world's actually this big, and it how like great songs kind of just really expand, and all the art, right? But can it really just expand how you see the world and the size of it and the depth of it.
I love that. I'm tracking every word with you, man. I love that.
So yes, I miss it, but
yeah, I can tell.
Right.
And what it was making me think is like, and I'm Tré, I want to ask that question of you too, like just in case it doesn't ever get back to that, like let's document it. I mean, like what you just described, Jody, is maybe it is going to take a while to get back to that, but I heard and felt from your words how important it was. Tré, is there one like that for you that we need to document, because like that sweaty elbow to elbow show that the musician just grabbed you?
All of them are all of them. I love house shows so much. I mean, I've played in kitchens, I've played in living rooms, I've played in bathrooms, with people packed shouldered. Like exactly what Jody was saying. There's an electric current that is kinetic, that you can feel next to the person next to you, and emanating from the performer. A lot of things, you know, it just bounces off the ceiling and the walls and the floors. And yeah, it's very, very special. All of the shows that I've ever seen or been at, good or bad, you know, well, you know, I could sweep the worst ones off the list, but
it happens.
for the most part, yeah, it's very important to, as a music lover or songwriter, to be around that version of music.
Yeah. There was a place in Fayetteville that's now gone. When I was in college and first moved here, called JR's Light Bulb Club, and it was a downstairs kind of basement type thing. In fact, the basement, when I walked in there to play that gig, I was like, oh my God, this feels like JR's Light Bulb Club, you know, that kind of like vibe, very brick, you know, the walls are just all kind of crazy and like not really the place to put a music venue, but it also works, you know what I mean? Like, and I was speaking to JR's, not the basement, but you know, like, I can't believe this works here. But when I was in college, I started seeing like really rowdy shows there, kind of to your point, Jody, like, you know, like really rowdy. And then all of a sudden, I don't even remember like how or why. Oh, I do. Victoria Williams came and played a show, and I knew of her through, you know, like Pearl Jam's cover of her song. And I was like, I'm going to go to this. And it was not rowdy, of course, because it was Victoria, and it wasn't wall to wall. It wasn't sweaty. But it was just amazing to, you know, immerse in that. And, you know, I credit that as like one of my introductions to singer-songwriter concerts, you know, because I was going to like the sweaty rock thing, you know, and I was really engaged in that. And I was gigging as a student in college. And I was like in an 8-piece funk band, and, you know, we were playing the party, you know, and then all of a sudden I was like, here's Victoria Williams holding 80 people wrapped, you know, just completely, you know, in the same place that I saw the rock band and doing the sweaty thing, you know, and I was like, what? This is so strange, you know, but yeah, so that's my document. I hope we get back to that moment, you know. For certain.
Well, this is funny. It makes me think of like I went to like, I see a lot of shows now, but I went to just for like for pure fun, just to so many like, crazy shows, like, and how my hearing is still, you know, definitely permanently damaged. Like, there was an MIA show in a club in Nashville that's like since closed. It was maybe on its turn on our first record. And it was so loud, but it was like, it was like crazy. It was just like, you know, I mean, or like, you know, it's just because, you know, sadly I was thinking about DMX. I saw him perform. The first time I saw him perform was on the tour with Jay-Z, Method Man, and Redman, and I think Kanye was the DJ. It was at like TSU's homecoming in Nashville in like 99 or something. So like DMX wasn't even like Party Up in Here wasn't out yet. It was like maybe like still like on his first record. And that, like, how wild that show was, you know, and like Method Man and Redman, like there was just a degree of like showmanship in their set in particular. Like I just had like, it just blew my mind. Like they were like rapping and it was like great and just like normal, but then in the middle of their set they were on wires and like came out over the crowd, and like people were like grabbing their shoes, and it was just like blew everyone's mind. And like I think I'd maybe seen, like, I think as a kid, you know, I went to a Michael Jackson like stadium show. So that's obviously a really big production, but like just to see like two guys that are just like going back and forth rapping, and it's like pretty like normal, but then all of a sudden just like fly into the crowd. It was just like, that was just, you know, it was insane, you know, and to be like not like over the crowd, but really just like basically just like surfing over the crowd.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, I know this is completely off topic. No, I'm just thinking about shows.
This is important to me. So I hope it's important to someone else.
You know? Yeah, these kids are like, who are these Method Man and Redman? You know.
Well, we've taken them on a musical journey. Listen, if nothing else, the footnotes to this talk will have you know, hours of listening, you know, from Chuck Berry to, you know, to Method Man, to DMX, to Robert Johnson, you know, to Victoria Williams. I mean, that to me is a playlist that I would listen to. So I'm liking it for that, if nothing. Tré, one of the things I failed on here is to say like, hey, let's play a tune. But I also know that like I didn't want to derail the conversation. But you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're ready for that, I'm in that spot, and I'd love to like, just open up the floor to you to say, hey, I'd love for you to play a song or two.
Yeah. Hey Tré, what's the trophy behind you for?
Oh, that's something I got at the local Goodwill.
Okay. You didn't earn it.
Oh, this is good.
This is looks like basketball, women's basketball.
Yeah, or handball. I mean, yeah.
I'm not sure what's
amazing. Does it have its plaque? Is it yeared?
Dated? 2019, I'm guessing. Or 19
maybe, maybe just 19. Very
yeah. 19th place trophy. The first place one must have been huge.
It makes me feel good though. I used to play baseball and soccer, so I had all those trophies, but at some point threw them out. This reminds me of those times. I pretend it's mine.
Yeah.
Step It Up and Go. That's the documentary.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Check it out. It's real cool.
Well, I've got my hands full, or my work cut out to put these little. I hadn't thought about footnoting a thing like this, but like, man, there's a lot that we can put together. It's almost like a guide, that we could associate with this.
Yeah.
So, okay, good.
You put a Spotify playlist together?
Maybe I'll just like put a mixtape. Yeah. Like you can check it out of the Multicultural Center. Yeah. How about that? No, I don't. But yeah, something along those lines. Cool. Well, Tré, thanks for being willing to play a couple tunes.
Sure.
Whatever you're feeling, I just put it in your hands, and I think
set the camera up a little better.
Yeah, and I'm gonna switch this. This is kind of like technical stuff. I'm gonna switch it to speaker view.
It's crazy. I never thought I'd get somewhat used to this virtual. I'm weirded out how used to playing in front of a camera. Yeah. Something I was not comfortable with before all of this. Now it's just so natural. I wouldn't say that, but more natural than before. This is one of those songs, speaking about the songwriting earlier, where you kind of translate the gibberish into words. This is a song called Caught It From the Rye, where you just let yourself float away in a Ouija feelings and melody out. Yeah. Can you hear that all right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Cutting off my... Good enough, huh? The sky then opened up, and from it came a light. Where have you been? Caught it from the right. Well, I was in a canyon, mingled with the tribe. Soon became a family as I became the kind. Sure, I'm getting older and younger than you still. Where have you been? Was in the northern hills, picking up the daisies a child left behind. As I put them by a tombstone, pretending it was mine. And this changing of the walls on my favorite paintings, they keep on falling down, and I need saving by the grace of God. But I know He's I've created another one like me, and lively live a life and die beyond and ride. Where have you been? Just pondering a thought. If nothing's everlasting and everything is lost, and everyone around me was all I ever got. Sure, I blame the order, the government is real. Where
have you been? Just trying to make a deal to the chief commander and be privy to the small. Cause soon they'll understand it and the ice will fall us all. It is changing of the walls on my favorite painters. They keep on falling down. Ain't no one needs saving by the grace of God. But I know He's I've created another one like me. Cut it from the rhyme.
Very nice. Thank you, Tré.
No worries.
I loved hearing that very much just guitar and voice there. You know, the record version is amazing, and it embodies the guitar and voice as the center of it. But I don't know. It just, maybe it's also just talking over this last hour, you know, and then it just felt very much like something that we haven't done in a while, like that I love, which is like song swap. You know, like you just hang and talk for a while, and then someone's like pulls out the guitar. And I didn't realize maybe how much I've been missing that, and so thank you. That took me there. So
yeah, I know the song swap circle is something I really miss.
Me too.
You know, doesn't really translate through streaming. It's impossible. But yeah,
it is. It is. But I was in that and feeling it and reminded of like how much I missed it. So thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get too heady in asking the question about the song because I think it stands on its own, but like, was rye one of those words that came out of just mumbling? I find
really
it.
Wish I remember. I could tell you.
Okay, well, and the reason I say
yeah, ride sounds good. You know, some words you know, if it feels good coming out of my voice or sounds good coming out, there's some words or consonants or vowels that don't sound good coming out of my voice.
Yeah.
So I favor the ones that do and build the song around the ones that feel good, you know, coming out.
Yeah.
So well, I must have that.
I talk all the time about this concept of, I call them clunker words, where like sometimes a song catches me when there's just a word that shouldn't be in a song and is, and it works. And rye is not a clunker word because it's so sparse, but it almost fits in that same place where every time you get back to that word, I'm surprised and caught in it just because it's not, you know, I mean, unless you work at a distillery, it's just not it's not like something that, you know, we have in our common vernacular. I feel like, even though it is, you know, I don't know that. Like, sometimes it's like a word that catches me. So I was just wondering if that was a vowel that became rye.
Totally. Yeah. You caught that one.
Nice. Is there another tune you'd like to do?
Yeah, sure there is. Wish I could play the new ones.
Well, we'll follow back up.
You can if you want.
Oh, look at that. There you go.
Yeah.
I'll play Can I play the new ones?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, can you? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all new to the people watching it, so they don't know that you're playing it wrong.
Yeah, right. Okay, here's an old song then. It's called Sweet Misery.
You can see the ring of darkness covering up the light, but to see it is to admit that it's just passing by. My friend in New York City, she calls me time to time, and I tell her made up stories but never tell her lies. In the way of my heart, it swings me left to right like a wrecking ball on a 6-foot chain forever all my life. It only goes to show sweet misery. You can follow me down to the end of my path, but you still gotta get through me. I believe that for the moment in heaven I reside. It might as well be anywhere, so why not in my mind? Oh, you, yeah, you. Who else am I talking to? Go sit down by your lonesome and entertain the fool. I was late to the party and I'm eating someone's food, but I've never been so hungry to be without a clue. It only goes to show sweet misery. You can follow me down to the end of my path, but you still gotta get through me. Yeah, you can follow me down to the end of my path, but you still gotta get through me. Yeah.
That was great.
Thanks.
Bryan, you're still muted.
Ha! Of course, that has to happen. This is Zoom.